view, this would portend now for us as a nation, considering our history with religious crisis?
I believe that the Inspector General of Police probably was not properly well advised. And I say so with respect. The police as an institution was established in 1945. And it has existed with this current uniform and outfit. The performance of security agencies should not be based on their outward adornments or uniform. It is the training you give them. It is the motivation you give them. It is the exposure to which they have all been given that will determine their performance. So what this portends for us as a nation is that security institutions and agencies would probably give priority to religious practices of detecting and preventing crime and protecting lives and property and guaranteeing safety for all. I think that should be the focus of any security agencies. And by the time you begin to use the platform of the police to enforce religion actions, you are going to introduce some kind of animosity within that organization by which it is possible that people will begin to take camps and begin to express support, implement a particular dress code for religious practices. It was resisted, by some other sect which practice other religion serve their God.
It's more
not at all. Not at all. As I have mentioned, as a minister of God, I would probably prefer that every person should dress decently and cover up. I have no problem with people. So my challenge is a public institution designing a policy enforcing private right to religion or against Muslims. And I was trained by a Muslim. Chief Ganifawa MSN is a renowned Muslim. I practiced with him for close to 6 years. Followed him to Ondo when he was being turbaned. The mother, the late Alaja, was sold them to the mosque at the time when she was being turbaned and when Gani himself was being ordained. So I don't see that allegation as holding water at all, because I have clients who are Muslims and we relate together very easily, and that I have friends, comrades, who are also of the opposite faith. So I'm trained to respect people's rights and to tolerate opposing besides their religious affiliations and beliefs in their privacy. I have no objection or hatred or animosity against any particular religion whatsoever at all.
Well, I asked that question because you've been quoted, and you also implied this here. You have accused the Inspector General of Police of using his office to push religious agenda. Isn't that view of yours preemptive?
Well, I say so because I believe that as an Inspector General of Police, the responsibility he owes to the people of Nigeria is law enforcement, is law and order, is very thorough into the private outfit of how members will dress up in terms of their religious practices. I feel that that was uncalled for. And is the first Inspector General of Police in history who will be doing that. That's why I said that he was using his office to enforce religion, whether on behalf of Islam or on behalf of Christians.
Some have alleged that this move might be encouraging Islamization of Nigeria. Do you share that view?
Military officers who claim that there are members of Boko Haram in this particular government. The past president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, admitted it, that Boko Haram members were in his government, even in Osrc. So if it is true that has officially indicated its intention to Islamize Nigeria, and as I speak to you, nobody has stopped me from practicing my own faith. Journalists also practice their own faith. So I cannot say honestly that there is an official policy to Islamize Nigeria, are trying to use their offices to enforce their own private agenda. But no official policy has been announced by the government so as yet, indicating that it intends to adopt a particular religion as a religion for Nigeria, which is why I was cautioning the Inspector General of Police to continue to work with the policy of government to maintain neutrality and secularity. I cannot say with confidence that I have evidence that the government is planning to Islamize Nigeria.
Some consequential voices have wondered if this issue of dress code should be our priority with the myriad of challenges the country is faced with at this time.
Well, it was a challenge that I threw to the Inspector General of Police. You know, I was at the NSAS panel.
Yes.
And we saw a lot about the challenges that police officers go through all over the land. We saw policemen that were not well trained. We saw policemen that were not well motivated. We saw policemen that have been abandoned and given the impression by the state that they do not matter. We saw policemen that were using their own finances to train themselves. And so we saw policemen that were staying in dilapidated barracks. And so they transferred this frustration and aggression to the civilians, which is what leads to constant strife and cases of accidental discharges and unlawful killings by police officers, because they are transferring their aggression against the government to civilians. So I thought that the Inspector General of Police was having some kind of misplaced priority at this point in time in our national life to be dwelling on wearing of scarves and stud earrings. The priority for any Inspector General of Police at this moment in our lifetime of food for VIPs. You saw policemen are said to be VIPs. Some died in some place trying to open a door somewhere in either Ogun State or so for VIP, in trying to prioritize the major concerns and needs of the Nigerian police, which is proper funding, proper training, proper exposure and motivation of police officers, so that they can better ensure that at least intelligence gathering is improved upon to ensure that there's better performance, not on external wearings and stud earrings.
Very many thanks to you, Mr. Adegborua, for leading this conversation on the big issue today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you. On the legality of the newly approved dress code for female police officers in Nigeria. Now let's go take the news update. We shall return to the panel session where we will further analyze this issue. Join us again.
Good evening. Here is news update. My name is Timileyin Falade. The management of Rufus-Giwa Polytechnic, or Rugipo, has approved Monday, March 14, 2022 as resumption date for the 2021-2022 academic session. A statement by the registrar of the institution, Sule Atiku, says screening and registration for all fresh students will commence on the same date of March 2022, adding that all academic activities will resume immediately. Professor Emmanuel Osodeke says nothing progressive has emerged to end the warning strike embarked upon by the body. The ASU strike, which is in its fourth week, has been hinged on the union's demands on the revitalization of public universities, earned academic allowances, renegotiation of a 2009 ASU federal government agreement, and inconsistencies in the integrated payroll and personnel information system. Professor Sodeki expressed his disappointment at the state of affairs at the government's inability to fulfill the promises it made 2 years ago. Now, the crisis in the All Progressives Congress APC has taken a new twist after the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) rejected the notice for an emergency meeting of the party's National Executive Committee (NEC). INEC Secretary Rose Oriaron Anthony, who confirmed the Commission's decision, said the meeting was not signed by the National Chairman and National Secretary of the CECPC, contrary to the provision of the Commission's Regulations and Guidelines for Political Party Operations 2018. Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State, who recently took over the leadership of the party, reportedly signed the letter for presence at an emergency meeting of the APC NEC ahead of the party's forthcoming national convention. But INEC, in its response, rejected the Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee ought to have signed the letter. It added that the Electoral Act required that the electoral umpire must be given at least 21 days notice of any convention, congress, conference or meeting for such purpose. About 3 weeks to the party's national convention scheduled to hold on March 26, reports emerged that Governor Mai Malabuni of Yobe State had been sacked as chairman of the CECPC. The Inspector General of Police, IGP Usman Alkali Baba, has expressed dismay at the flagrant violation of the approved Nigeria Police Force dress code by officers on patrol and guards stop and search and other routine police operations. IGP noted that the aforementioned officers have formed the habit of wearing T-shirts and face caps with Special Forces, Commando, Gallant Mopole, Scorpion, and other inscriptions while on duty. The IGP has therefore ordered an immediate ban on such unapproved apparels, describing it as unacceptable. It said henceforth approved uniforms for easy identification. The IGP ordered that all police disciplinary units shall the IGP X Squad and monitoring unit to ensure the strict compliance of the directive with severe sanctions for erring officers. A magistrate court in Lagos has ordered the remand of a bus rapid transit's BRT driver, Mr. Andrew Nice, over his alleged involvement in the death of his passenger, Oluwabamiche Ayanwola. Magistrate Omobola Salau ordered the remand for 30 days following an application by the police. The officer in charge of legal, Yetunde Cardoso, presented the police had filed the remand application, which premised it on 4 counts of alleged murder, sexual assault, misconduct, and interference with a corpse. Magistrate Salau said we remanded in custody to enable the police conclude their investigations as well as to await the outcome of a legal advice of the Director of Public Prosecution. And that's news update. Join us at 7 for the comprehensive news package.
Thank you for rejoining us on The Big Issue. Our focus for today is the newly approved dress code for police female personnel. And our lead discussant has been Mr. Ebolu Adeborua, SAN. Now, joining me in this panel session is Sunday Kolawole.
It's nice being here again. Everyone, welcome on the panel discussion segment of The Big Issue. And as we did say, the lead discussant, Ebolu Adeborua, has talked, the Senate Great of Nigeria, has talked about the topical issue, that's the newly approved dress code for female police officers in Nigeria. We'll be expanding the conversation in this.
We have our panelists today, Mr. Daisy Adetarmi. Thank you for joining us on The Big Issue.
I'm glad to be here this day, thanks.
And Leko is a popular and regular feature right now. Thank you so much, Alali. Some Nigerians think that this should not even be on the table at all, this issue. But some have actually expressed concern, like our lead discussant has. Do you think that
there should be room for concern at this auspicious period of Nigerian political issue evolution? You will agree with me that Nigerian police has been the Nigerian police should grapple with. We have lack of good training of the officers. We have underfunding of the police force. We have a lot of ills that are confronting the Nigerian police, and for them now to be talking about dress code is something that is coming out of the blues that a lot of Nigerians will want to question the rationale behind. When you say a police woman is now free to put on hijab, or you hide it under scarf, and they could put on stud earrings and things like that. I mean, it's only God that knows your mission, because Nigeria, as it were, is a secular state. We do not practice a particular religion. As a matter of fact, if you look at Section 10 of the 1999 Constitution, it expressly states that there must be neutrality on the part of government officials, agencies of government, as far as issue of religion is concerned. Police force. You're only trying to look at people that are celestial churchgoers, for instance, that do not even put on shoes. Are you saying they are now free to, be in the Nigerian police force and at the same time wanting to live according to the dictates of their religion by not putting on shoes? All these things are anachronistic, and I don't think these are the things that the Nigerian police should bow to move the police force forward.
The comical aspect of it, from our lead discussant, was that maybe those traditionalists who have their way into the police force also come with Igbadi and all of those things and put it on all of those things, so that they will also be able to showcase their religion in their professional career. I don't know.
If care is not taken, you will see people that are traditionalists, as you have just said. They put on Olonde, they put on Igbadi and all manner of things to even complement their effectiveness into an era of unbridled anarchy and confusion. So I think it's best for the federal government to resign this decision now that it has not festered, because if it should fester, we are in for it. Although they are saying that it is in line with international best practices by pointing to countries like US, like Canada, like which other country, UK, and Turkey, too. America is a place whereby devolution of power is so much as far as the running of their police system is concerned.
They don't run the centralized
They don't run the centralized form of policing that we are doing in Nigeria. So how dare you now start be comparing us with the US? So these are the anomalies that are coming up now that we must all nip in the bud.
Do we go ahead to now say because something is done in a particular country, it has become best practice? How do we judge what is of international best practice? Is it once it is done by a Western country, then it's international best practice? If the argument of the IGP
and there is an international interest. And what we do most times is, as been what you have asked us as regards standards, we usually lay claims to that word international best practice. What is international best practice? We look forward to all these advanced countries, the way they do things, and the standard, and etiquettes of ethos of professionalism in all forms. And we find out that, yes, because they achieve results in all these, we tend to always follow them, I will use the word, permit me, blindly. The truth about it is that
perhaps it's because they really do achieve results.
They achieve results, yes.
With no recourse to our culture,
and all that. So if it's an international best practice, it's one of the reasons why the IGP, for instance, have taken this particular decision. I want to ask him again that at what point do we have an international best practice that has a universal standard? There is none. And the peculiarity that we all have in this country, for instance, is one of the most heterogeneous. The Constitution, it was clearly enshrined in it that we must, as much as possible, be neutral in terms of biases that we may have, knowing fully well that Nigeria has so many of ethnic diversities and religious differences. In fact, one of the major sentiments that is a drawback in Nigerian polity, an achievement that we ought to have had in times past, is based on religion. Look at our politics, for instance. We are talking about international best practice as an example. There was a time in this country we were thinking, even when it's not pronounced, that could a Muslim ticket fly? And so on and so forth. So as much as most of these biases are not pronounced, we all know that in various ways with which we demonstrate or practice our livelihood or our professions, these are implicitly inclined in the activities. And because of that, till date, one needs to actually stress further that the constitution of this country, which of course is paramount, should continuously be, checked and reviewed. What the IGP has done clearly, if you check where the reasons he gave, is that gender inclusion is part of it, and gender mainstreaming, and making sure that at least optimum results is achieved in terms of professionalism. We know that women policing, for instance, is a bit peculiar and different from the male. Being that was put into police force was in 1910 or so. She was Alice. Alice Tenben was put in, recorded and put as the first woman to be a policewoman in Los Angeles Police Department. And afterwards, there were a lot of criticism that followed that. Along the line, this started to evolve. And what we have today is about 12% or more of Nigerian, of international police women in all these advanced countries. They make sure that in America, for instance, they have about 12.6% of them as women police. So they have their own role, to be very candid with you. I was thinking that the IGP would say the men too should come up with their caps and some other things, apart from the women. But we must see the peculiarity of women policing in this aspect. But the undertone of religion will always come out. And that undertone is one of the reasons why what I felt the IGP has not done properly is to allow the law through the National Assembly, to be able to either review, amend, repeal, or promulgate any of these new laws as to when everybody is engaged to actually determine how it goes. But he has done this unilaterally, and I hope that, it's been taken up at the moment. There are various stakeholders, especially the National Assembly, that will go into this and interpret or reinterpret the provisions in the Constitution as regards that Section 10, which clearly states and puts together the neutrality